Physicists comment if infinity existed in any form, then the outer borders and the inner borders don't exist. Therefore there would be no friction in the middle to create any variance whatsoever. The fact that we can measure it all proves that infinity is false. Now, what you are talking about is physical infinity. Can a physical object be infinite? Infinity is possible in math. One can keep adding 1 to a number into infinity. So infinity does exist. We as human perceive infinity does exist. As far as physical infinity, and I'm going to assume math is not physical, Einstein said a spaceship cannot travel the speed of light, because its gas tank would have to be infinitely large, or something along those lines. Now that assumption was based on what he perceived to be reality, or there can be no spaceship that can be infinitely large, or assumption nothing physical is larger than everything physical. That is what you are saying, due to frictional restraints. But let's turn that around for a second. Everything physical is larger than nothing physical. Assumption every physical thing is larger than nothing. That is physical infinity. If you detect confusion in that statement, it is a symptom the verbal language has its limitations. Assumption of universe is physical. Assumption if the physical universe is infinite, and we do not know if it is or is not, so that is an unknown. Assumption then there is physical infinity, because the universe is physical. Human beings are perfect, that is why math is perfect, that is why human beings' perception is perfect. This also means verbal language is perfect. Every law of science is perfect. Physics is perfect. An atom is 99.9% mass, 99.9999% of life forms on this perfect planet are still alive. Reality is what humans perceive it to be. Human beings have the least advanced brains, so they perceive the least, so their perception is perfect. One's perception is not relative to one's belief capacity. Perception is nothing. Reality is not a true vacuum. The Allies are winning the war on terror, and the terrorists are losing the war on terror. Zero is proof math is perfect. Einstein had slight logical capacity, and came to his theories using his emotions and math. E equals mc2 is not infinity. The world economy is not in complete collapse. The world economy is perfect. All information gained in physics is perfect because humans who are perfect gathered this information gained. Physics understands everything, because physics is perfect, because humans are perfect. The driver did stop at the stop sign. The cop did see the driver not stop at the stop sign. Israeli organism error attacks on Gaza. Organism kills 155. Life is not fair. Perhaps in life, some organisms are not able to function in harmony with organisms around them. These life forms unable to function begin to show symptoms of confusion. They begin to affect other functioning life forms. These life forms that are unable to function are really trying to do the best they can. They desire to function with other life forms around them, but they are just unable to function. It is not their fault they are unable to function, it is just life is not fair. Sometimes things are not meant to be. This is a symptom that life is not fair. The longer this organism denies it is unable to function with those around it, the organism's confusion increases. The organism continues to make emotional conclusions which results in more confusion. This confusion affects all the organisms around this one organism unable to function. The logical conclusion is to face the logical truth. The logical truth is to isolate the confused organism, so that confused organism can perish, in order to save the organisms that can function. The organisms that can function have more value than the organism that cannot function. That is a symptom that life is not fair. Life is not fair. I have posted this here so perhaps you will understand or see the logical conclusion, or logical spirit of this example. The logical spirit of this example is a hint to what I see as the first generation logical conclusion of understanding everything is isolation of entities that are deemed unable to function with entities around them. That is the first generation logical conclusion of reaching or approaching a state of understanding everything. Already physicists have a sense they are better than others. I am not saying they are not. They are logically special. They have special abilities. That is logically true. I am just saying I am already aware of the trend. In order to solve understanding everything, you must become more logical. As you become more logical, emotions are silenced. Then logical conclusions are all that remain. Isolation of entities that are deemed unable to function with entities around them. is a logical conclusion. If entity Israel isolates entity B Gaza, then entity B is logically expected to lash out to avoid isolation to save itself. The logical solution of entity C, the world, is to isolate entity A, so it is no longer is able to isolate entity B. This may result in entity A lashing out at entity C, so entity A can also avoid isolation. The logical conclusion of that is the more powerful entity will win or correct, or force the weaker entity to fall in line. The world is going to have to force Israel to stop isolating Gaza. If Israel does not conform to the wishes of the world, Israel will be isolated and will perish. That is a eventual logical conclusion to this situation. Life is not fair. This Israeli air attacks on Gaza kill 155 is a result of the world entity being confused. The world entity is confused about its dominance. The world entity is the supreme dominant entity. No entity on the planet is more powerful than the world entity. The sooner the world entity understands everything is under its influence, the sooner things like this Israeli air attacks on Gaza kill 155 will stop happening. Palestine is not the main concern. Israel is not the main concern. This Israeli air attacks on Gaza kill 155 is only a symptom. A symptom the world entity is confused about who is in control. Palestine and Israel have no control compared to the world entity. Palestine and Israel are trying to influence the world entity, so they have more influence. This time the Palestinians had more firepower. This is a symptom. Palestine desires to have more firepower, to fight the dominant entity Israel, to avoid isolation caused by Israel. This power struggle between Israel and Palestine would not be happening at all if the dominant entity, the world, was not confused about the fact it is the entity that is in total control of all entities on the planet. Perhaps it should be everyone's goal to help the world entity understand it is the true dominant entity on Earth. The true dominant entity on the planet does not have to answer to any entity. It does not have to settle for anything. That is the attributes of being the true dominant entity. I bet you BDSM fans are pleased with the spirit of this. Physics, the act of one proving to another that neither understands much. Apache warrior, I feel sorry for the innocent people stuck in the middle. The innocent victims of the conflict are on one level the Palestinians. The Israelis who do not like to see the suffering of innocent Palestinians are also innocent victims. Then the people in the world who do not like to see the suffering of innocent Palestinians are also victims. Then there are people who see the suffering of the victims in Palestine and Israel, and in the world, and they are also innocent victims. What this means is, the entity of mankind is one entity. If an innocent Palestinian suffers, an innocent Israeli suffers from being aware of the Palestinian suffering, and a person in the world suffers from seeing both of them suffering. If anyone is suffering in one respect, we are all suffering. The best logical decision to make is to try to make it so no innocents have to suffer, because that will mean perhaps none of us will have to suffer. In reality, we are all innocents. You are not fooling some of the people none of the time. Humans are flawed, Muslims are humans, Muslims are flawed, Muslims have a weakness. Because they are flawed, Muslims' weakness is an approved for no killings. A Muslim will kill his child to save his own. A solution to conflict based on Muslims' weakness or flaw. Treat the Muslims in Gaza with extreme kindness, treat them kinder than you treat yourself, and make sure the Muslim world sees you are treating them kinder than yourself. This will put the Muslims in Gaza in a position of defending pride or honor. This will put Muslims in the world in a position of defending pride or honor. This will take some time to convince them you are being kind to the Gaza Muslims. To speed this up, treat the Muslims in Gaza very kind. Kill them with kindness, so to speak. In time, perhaps less than 6 months, if you treat them with enough kindness, they will be unable to fire rockets at you. They will be forced to live in peace with you. Why? Muslims' weakness is honor. When they fire rockets at you after this kindness gesture, the Muslims will kill the rocket shooters, because they will be protecting their own pride. Much like the Muslims kill their own children, to protect their pride or honor. This is the only logical solution to the conflict. Israel is not able to defeat 1 billion Muslims ever. So war against Muslims is an error to begin with. I am aware you may come to emotional conclusions why this won't work. Those emotional conclusions are an error also. If there is any way to solve this conflict, this is the way. If you do not decide to go this way, then perhaps you are not interested in living in peace. In that case, That is good, because eventually the Muslim world is going to kill every last one of you, if you do not decide to accept this plan. That is the logical conclusion or logical end of this current strategy you are using is your deaths. Perhaps you are aware of that. I am only capable of extreme logic, and I am very aware. That is the logical conclusion. Perhaps you should just trust me, and trust my judgment. If you do not try this kill them with kindness plan, your country and people in your country will be eliminated eventually. I promise you that. 15 million Israelis versus 1+ billion Muslims. Do you think you are ever going to win? Do you really think you ever had a chance to begin with? And no, 200 nukes isn't enough nukes to kill a billion Muslims who essentially increase in numbers every week. Physicists comment if infinity exists.